All right, so Eskom is about to give an update on the state of the national grid at its megawatt power station. Let's listen in.
To inform you that Rulani Matabula, the acting group executive for generation, has tendered his resignation and will leave the employment of Eskom at the end of this month, November. So Rulani's successor will be announced in due course, pending the relevant recruitment process. But until then, Thomas Conradi, there on my left-hand side, will hold the fort, fully supported by all the key stakeholders. And may God bless you and your family abundantly. Okay, I'd like to start first by just an overview of the operations. And as indicated, then generation will be unpacked in more detail by Thomas. And then Sefomotso will have a look at the system. And in his crystal ball, he will give us a good feel for what we can expect in the time to come. Now, we continue to see varied performance by our operating divisions year to date, with generally good performance from transmission, distribution, as well as group capital. The unsatisfactory performance from the generation division, unfortunately, continues. Now, the distribution technical performance is sustained at better than tolerance levels for both duration and frequency of system interruptions. And when I talk about tolerance levels, I am referring to international benchmarks. It looks like I've got some problem here on the system. Can somebody just come and have a look at this system? No, it's not moving on this side. Okay, what I will do in the meantime while we fix this problem, it's back. Then, unfortunately, in the distribution environment, we do have some challenges. And that is Munich debt. As we speak at the end of October, in the distribution environment, we have outstanding debt that is exceeding 52 billion rand. So people utilizing our product, but for some reason decide not to pay for that. Then also we do have some challenges on energy losses, although there has been an improvement. This is where people, again, are utilizing without paying and then overloading our networks, and that is giving us some significant challenges. However, on that, we have made some improvements. Now, on the transmission side, we see good performance with the system reliability and maintenance execution that meets what we have planned for. Now, Koeberg Nuclear Unit number 1 continues to operate very safely and has been online as of today 384 days. Unit 2 commenced with a return to service from a very short duration outage to remedy the problem we had with the control rods, and as of today it is online for 51 days. Now, our coal stock is very healthy. We have an average stock days of about 35 days, and none of the power stations are actually below the grid code. So good performance on that side. Although we do have some challenges with coal quality, but in terms of volumes, it is solid performance. Now, as I said in the beginning, generation side business remains a concern. Specifically, the coal fleet. And the energy availability is way below our target of 65%. So we are standing at 58.53% year to date. So really it is not good performance, and it is something that we are working hard to improve. Now, since the 1st of April, unfortunately, we had 141 days of load shedding. And that is obviously a huge source of concern to ourselves. And we fully understand the impact thereof on the economy of the country and the lives of 61 million people in the country. However, we still have a challenge in terms of sufficient capacity in the country. Now, we have to continue with the reliability maintenance, but it makes it extremely difficult if you do not have sufficient capacity to meet the demand of the country while you need to do sufficient and adequate reliability maintenance. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'd like to emphasize we need additional capacity in the country the day before yesterday. And we have been talking about this for a long time. It is really time that we start seeing the results. In terms of rain readiness, good improvement. So we haven't had any significant hiccups with the good rains. The good Lord has blessed us lately. So all the plans, action plans that we have put in place over the last number of years has definitely paid dividends. So we are proud. And it's not to say that we're going to stop here. We will continue to improve wherever necessary and required. Now, unfortunately, because of the system constraints, we had to use much more than the anticipated levels of diesel for our open cycle gas turbines, and I'll give a little bit of feedback later. Environmental matters, such as emissions, have shown very good improvement in the beginning of the year. However, the industrial action we had in the middle of the year contributed significantly that we had a deterioration in performance. So we have in place a steering committee that is looking at the environmental challenges that we have, and specifically in the generation environment, sitting every second week, looking at the action plans and dealing with the challenges that we do have. On the safety side, we believe excellent performance, good performance. If you look at the employee lost time injury rate for the employees, it's standing at 0.626 against a tolerance level of 0.3. Contractors even better at 0.22 against the same tolerance level, and combined we are standing on 0.24 against the tolerance level of 0.3. So good performance, and I'm encouraging my colleagues to continue to make sure that everybody that is coming to work every day leaves home safely. And if I say everybody, that means employees, suppliers, contractors, everybody that we interact with. Unfortunately, we did have 2 fatalities, very sad, 1 employee and then also 1 contractor. On the 1st of June this year, Kusile Unit 4 achieved commercial operation, and the plan date was the beginning of January, end of the year, beginning of January. So we beat that target by at least 6 months. So excellent performance from the colleagues in Group Capital as well as our contractor partners. Now, in the period from June to September, Kusile Unit 2 successfully achieved quite a number of milestones, namely boiler clean. We had some first fires on oil as well as on coal. However, unfortunately, on the 17th of September, we had a fire in the gas air heater, significant damage. Now, the root cause, we will finalize, the contractor will finalize that report. It will be submitted to Eskom by the end of the week, early next week. However, the impact thereof is a delay of 11 months. So where we had an anticipated first synchronization of the middle of next year, now it's only going to happen, the indications I received this morning, in August, September of next year. So this had a significant impact on additional megawatts on the grid. 800 to be precise. And also what is important to understand, if you first synchronize it to the grid, while you're doing your capability and your commissioning tests, while it's connected to the grid, you still have access to those megawatts. So a significant challenge that we have picked up. If I then look at distribution in a little bit more detail, electrification connections, although we've only done 40,385 year to date against a target of nearly 45,000, we will achieve. We had some material challenges in the beginning of the year, but Monde and his team has assured us that he will achieve the year-end target. In terms of planned maintenance, although we're only standing on 85.46% against a target of 93%, that we will ramp up as well and make sure that we do the necessary maintenance as required. However, on the positive side, we had no negative impact yet, not having done the maintenance that we have planned. On the duration of incidents and the frequency of incidents, really good performance against the tolerance levels, industry benchmarks. It is not to say that we will now rest and say we have arrived. It is now to see how can we improve even further. But really some good performance, even in terms of restoration time, because when you have a fault, how quickly do you restore that? Also a positive improvement in performance. Refurbishment, we're behind. This is an area that needs attention, and Monde and his team is really committed to give that the necessary attention. But all in all, we can see that distribution is performing extremely well. What we actually do pick up lately is that vandalism and theft is beginning to play a significant part in the challenges that we do have on the electrical network, where people tend to decide to come and steal the copper, come and steal steel members, and actually sell it for so much less than what it's worth, and then leaving a risk behind. On the transmission division, similar good performance. The system minutes lost less than 1. We're currently standing on 0.6 against a year-end target of 3.53. This basically relates to when you have a significant incident relative to what you have installed on the system. So really good performance. In terms of maintenance, we are doing exactly what we're saying and what we have planned to do. We had 2 major incidents against a tolerance of 2, so there we are on track, and we had 21 interruptions on the transmission network against a tolerance or a target of, tolerance sounds better, of 34. Again, here we have the same challenge on the electrical network in terms of theft and vandalism. It is actually amazing that somebody can look at a steel tower and see some beds, and then go and steal those members and make beds and sell beds out of them. So we do have some really challenges. On Koeberg, the nuclear operating unit, snapshot looking at high-level indicators, not good performance. However, I would like to emphasize again that we are managing Koeberg safely. We have a nuclear safety review board that is visiting Koeberg twice per annum. It consists, I think it's 6 specialists, external specialists, international recognized specialists. And their main aim is to come here and look how safe do we operate Koeberg. Now they're arriving again next week in the country. And the feedback to date is we are operating, although there are operational challenges, we are operating Koeberg safely. Now, the energy availability is down, mainly because of unit number 2 in the beginning of the year, where we postponed the number one, there are 2 reasons, main reasons. Number 1, we postponed the implementation of the steam generators, and that meant we had to make sure that the steam generators, the old ones, are still capable and ready for another cycle. So that took some time. And then secondly, we replaced the reactor head as well as the control rod mechanisms, and we had some significant challenges with those items that we have replaced. So that delayed the outage quite significantly, and that is what had the negative impact on the energy availability. Now, because of Unit 2, when we eventually managed to bring it back to commission it, we had a trip, and that's why we had that trips where we have a tolerance level of 1, we had this 1 trip already. Then the force loss rate is also due to the fact that we had the delay in returning this unit. But all in all, really good performance, solid performance from Koeberg. Now, we are getting ready to extend the life of Koeberg by another 20 years. And that means we have to do quite a number of projects. We have to make sure, we have obviously to convince and make 100% sure that the regulator, National Nuclear Regulator, are comfortable and satisfied that we can proceed. So we successfully submitted the safety case to the regulator in July. So they have now their time to study it and to get back to us. Now also, there's some misunderstanding that I'd like to clarify today. Now, as part of this review of Koeberg life extension, an international Atomic Energy Agency team of nuclear experts carried out a review of the life extension activities during March. They then produced a report, and everybody is running away with this report. Now, Koeberg is fully aware of all the issues raised in that specific report, and all those issues have been addressed, and it will be, and it has already, formed part of all the submissions we are making to the National Nuclear Regulator. The IAEA also then offered their assistance, and we have engaged them, and we will make use of them wherever it is needed. We will also then invite them back in the beginning of 2024 to come and do a further and a follow-up review. So we are fully working with, we have taken note of this report. We are addressing all the issues, none of it, and I'm repeating and emphasizing, none of it was a surprise to ourselves. And those are all visible, we are transparent about it, and we will, and I'm emphasizing again and I'm repeating myself, all of those will be in the submissions that we are making to the regulator. Now, in the 8th of December, around about the middle, from the 8th to the middle of December next month, we will then shut down unit number 1, and that will be for extensive maintenance, for refueling, as well as a replacement of 3 steam generators. We believe that our readiness has improved drastically, and we are ready now to make sure that we successfully implement these steam generators. Now, unit number 2 will then go on an outage around about August, September next year. But this obviously is going to make it extremely difficult in terms of available capacity. So we're going to take 920 megawatts offline from the middle of December till about June, and then again in August, September for another period of, say, 180 to 200 days. So it is going to be a challenge in terms of production for generation. However, we believe that all the activities and projects that we need to implement to extend the life of Koeberg by another 20 years, we have it in hand, and we will be successful in obtaining our license moving forward. High-level generation, now the energy availability I've spoken about, poor performance, really it is not good. Various reasons for that, but if you look at it, it is not good, and this is why we do have load shedding in the country. So if you look at the trips, number of trips, it is way too many. And this is something that we need to get a handle on. You know, last year when we, about the same time we're talking about the number of trips, we were saying too many trips. And this year we've actually exceeded that. So we really need to get our hands on this unreliability and unpredictability of some of the units in some of the power stations. The partial load losses, that's when you have a motor vehicle and when you put on the accelerator, you're supposed to get 120 out of it, but when you do it, you only get 100 out of it. So that variance is what we refer to as partial load losses, is nearly 6,000 against the tolerance that we've set ourselves of about 3,700. So it is an area that needs attention. Now, unplanned load losses. Now, this refers to breakdowns, it refers to the partial load losses and others losses that we have. 30% is way too high. That needs to come down to the mid-teens. That's where we need to get it to. Thomas will talk about all the plans that we have in place to make sure that that's where we are getting to. However, it makes it extremely difficult, and I'll repeat myself a number of times. If you do not have sufficient capacity, it makes it difficult to take the units off and care for them properly and the way you're supposed to. It doesn't help, and this is what's happening currently. You take a unit off, and you have all the best intentions to do all the work to get it predictable and reliable, but you have to bring it back because that capacity is needed in the country. A positive aspect is that we are doing extremely well in terms of our planned maintenance. That we have up from the 4, 5, 6% 2 years ago, and on average we are keeping it now to the 10%. So now during the holiday season we will continue to ramp up the planned maintenance. Obviously a huge negative effect excuse me, is that in order to supply the demand of the country, we have to run our open cycle gas turbines, the two stations we have, the one at Gaurikwa and the other one at Ankerlig, Mossel Bay and at Atlantis. We have to run it extensively. Now, we have invested in excess of 12 billion rand this year already burning diesel. Now, needless to say, Eskom has significant financial challenges as well. Now, if we look at the load shedding that we currently have and what we're implementing, it is also to address the issue of the financial resources, the scarce financial resources that we have. We do not have money to burn diesel anymore. You know, if you find the municipalities, I've just been saying, owing you 52 billion rand, but on the other side you are forced, to burn diesel while people are owing you money. So you are depleting your cash flows, and this is where we find ourselves at a very, very delicate position. And moving forward, provided we can resolve the issue of cash flow, we will be forced as Eskom to implement load shedding because we do not have the money to burn the diesel at the rate that we have been doing up until now. And I think it's important to understand this. If you don't have money, you cannot utilize something that you don't have. So it's a critical item that we need to take note of. And currently the way that we plan our load shedding is to burn as little as possible diesel, to preserve our resources to the best. If we then look over the last 2 years, how we have performed, our energy availability, we can see that it is really sort of on par. So we haven't yet made that positive step change in improving our energy availability. So we will see that our planned maintenance, the dark blue, continue to be around about the 10% on average. However, what is really hurting us is that sort of orange, brownish color that you see there, which is what I've been referring to, the breakdowns and the losses that we do have. That is way too high. You can't have it at 30%. So, and the reasons Thomas will talk about. But that is a picture that is jumping at us. And this is basically why we have the difficult position that we find ourselves in. This is just demonstrating that we continue to do our planned maintenance, short-term as well as long-term. Short-term being, the gold-brown bar, and then the blue is referring to the long-term, the philosophy, the reliability maintenance. This is just indicating that we've made a decision to do maintenance wherever we can to the best of our ability, and that is what we're doing. I've decided to show the next 4 slides as well based on international benchmarks. Now, if we look, it all starts about in the year 2000 and it ends here around about 2020. And the dark line is the international benchmark, and the dotted line is basically our own generation performance. And if we look there by the red vertical line, that's where the things started changing in 2012, where we started performing much worse than the international benchmark. And we all know the majority of the reasons, the issue that we were running. You know, these units, we created virtual capacity, we didn't invest, etc. But this is to indicate that by 2012, we started to go below the international benchmark. If you look at planned maintenance, again, the same picture. But continuously, we have been below the international benchmark in maintaining your plant. So you can see here from 2018, we started now to really ramp it up. And so if you look at 2021 and 2022, that is unfortunately not on the slide, that is now at the 10%. So if we've really ramped up, you know, to look after your plant. Because isn't it amazing? The respect you show your plant is the same respect that the plant is showing yourself. So the next slide is looking at the utilization. So these units that is running, at what utilization are we utilizing it? Are we running it? And here we can see, look at the benchmark, similar age of plant, and if you look how we are running our plant. So it's very clear that we've been running our existing plant that needs a lot of care, not maintained, in the red all the time. And the reason being is the capacity that you have available needs to match the demand of the country. So it's very clear that we have created, if you look at this, virtual capacity. So it's capacity that you actually do not have, but that you created because you were running your plant at that utilization. And then just in terms of the unplanned, where we find ourselves, you can see also started changing here by 2008, 2009, and it is clear from this slide that there's a lot of work that we need to do to make sure that we deal with trips, with breakdowns, the whole unreliability and unpredictability of our plant. Now, this slide I'm not going to talk through, it's just for you because it will be available, is just what are the root causes because where are we where we are today? And very briefly, it's when we requested, there was a white paper in 98 saying we need additional capacity. Unfortunately, those decisions were not made. The decisions were only made in 2007. And by then it was too late, and that's why we created ourselves a significant challenge going forward. But you can read through the slide. I'm not going to go through it. We are focusing on 10 areas, and Thomas will go into a little bit more detail on how are we going to solve and what are we doing currently to solve the challenge in the coal fleet. When I talk about the coal fleet, we also have in the generation, we have what we call peaking. Now, peaking referred to hydro, it refers to pump storage, it refers to the open cycle gas turbines, and it refers to the wind farm. Now, those areas of generation business are really performing well. But the coal fleet is giving us really some headaches. And it's also important to understand of the 14 power stations, coal-fired power plant that we do have, if you take Medupi and Kusile, where we have some challenges in any case, the 12 that is left, the average age of those are in excess of 43 years old. Now, if you have an old car and you don't look after it, you know the results and the implications thereof. So the 10 focus areas is number one is we look at the plant. What is the condition of the plant and what do we need to do to fix it? So We look at the condition, what sort of maintenance do we need to do, what replacement do we need to do, etc. Then the issue of inadequate capacity. Where we have to defer maintenance because you do not have sufficient capacity, it is now, we actively need to get additional capacity. So we take note of the fact that there's inadequate capacity, and that has a negative effect on how you treat and how you look after your plant. Then it's skills and experience. I'm not going to take a long time talking about this, but we do have some challenges. We've lost a lot of competence and experience. However, I'm the first one to say we have stunning colleagues on board. They're young, they're inexperienced, they have got all the potential and all the talent in the world. It is now, how do you harvest it while you're dealing with a challenging situation? And I believe it's also important to understand, if you take 10, 20 years ago, 20, 25 years ago, you had plant that it was relatively new, plant that it was maintained, and you had very experienced people running those plants. Now, where we find ourselves now is plant that is 20 years later, older, not maintained, abused, and been run by not so experienced workforce. So it's critical, and that's what we're doing now, is to look at training, looking at development, looking at coaching, and looking at mentoring of our colleagues. Then something that is difficult to understand, but a reality in our business, it is fraud and corruption. It is amazing that people will enrich themselves to the detriment of 61 million people in the country. However, that's what we find. And is it difficult to deal with? Yes, it is. Is it only at a certain level in the organization? No, it's not. And this is what makes it extremely difficult. So we have numerous actions in place and initiatives in place, but I can assure you this is a difficult situation. It took me a long time to understand that greed is an untreatable disease. Then we're looking at policies and procedures. How do we change it, specifically procurement, etc.? How do we make it more easy? How do we make it more adaptable? How can we go back to a plant that is designed and sometimes built by a regional equipment manufacturer, that we use those skills and that equipment and spares again? So it is now to relook the way that we're procuring and looking at our policies and procedures. Then funding, our colleague Caleb Kasim, our Chief Financial Officer, and I know he finds it extremely difficult with all the challenges we have. He has now been making money available for the generation division as well as for the wire side of the business to do maintenance. But it is now important that if you do the maintenance, whatever form, short-term, reliability, that you are successful, and that it's not necessary that when you bring a unit back that it trips and you have to work on it again. So that's critical. Environmental compliance, it is another aspect that we have challenges with. So there's dedicated focus, as I said earlier. We have the steering committee that is constantly looking at how do we deal with all these challenges that we do have successfully. Then on the coal side, although we have the volumes, we have significant challenges in terms of coal. Where we are receiving coal by truck, we tend to find that the quality, for whatever reason, and I'm not going to elaborate on that, is not what we actually contract and what we're paying for. So that is a focus area as well. Then the new build defects at Kusile and Medupi. We have progressed very positively. If we look at Medupi as an example, we have improved the energy availability from 40% to 60% and up to the very low 80s. That's where we are. Now, unfortunately, in Kusile, we do not have a similar performance improvement yet, because we have a FGD, a flue gas desulfurization unit at Kusile that we don't have at Medupi, and that is giving us really headache. It's a single point of failure, and this is why we have challenges. But we are dealing with that, and I'm sure Thomas will talk about that. And then our own construction unit, Eskom Rotec Industries, we've relooked the strategy on this unit, and This unit is now to focus primarily on some of the key areas within the Eskom business, and not, doing everything for everybody. So it is really focused now to specifically assist generation on the center line with some work. Progress in terms of Medupi, we had the explosion, a generator explosion on the 8th of August, or 15th of August somewhere. No, it was the 8th of August last year. So the audit and forensic investigation has been completed, and as a result of that, we dismissed 2 individuals. However, the generator rotary refurbishment has commenced, so we have a dedicated team, we have a recovery manager. So far, and all the best to the team, and well done to the team. We are following the program as we've set ourselves in terms of the deliveries. So well done, please continue with that. And based on the preliminary results, we believe that this unit will in commercial operation again by August, September 2024. So it's still a long time, it's just a little bit less than 2 years. And it's 720 megawatts, so it's really hurting us as well. However, the progress is positive moving forward. Then on Kusile, recently I'm sure you've read a lot about this. A lot of people had a lot of things to say about it. But yes, on the 23rd of October, a few weeks ago, while Kusile Unit 1 was on a forced outage, the flue gas duct experienced a structural failure. And currently it is resting and supported by Unit number 2 and Unit 3 ducts housed in the same smoke chimney. There are some pictures that I'm showing there that you can see the failure. So obviously a lot of investigation now needs to take place. We need to understand the impact on Unit number 2 and Unit number 3, because as I said, the 3 units are feeding into the same chimney. Now, currently Unit 2 as well as Unit 3, both of them are off. All 3 of them are off. Now, 3 times 720 gives you what? Gives you 2,100 megawatts. Now, if you start adding this up, 2,100 megawatts for 3 units, another 700 megawatts at Medupi, another 920 megawatts that soon will be off at Kuburg. It shows you that we have some significant challenges to match the capacity with the demand going forward. And then we have the financial challenge that we do not have the money to burn diesel all along. So we really have a significant challenge in the generation environment. And the indications, when I spoke today to the team, it seems that the repair of this duct will be at least 6 months. So it is a significant challenge that we have. On group capital, just quickly want to say that it's good performance. Like in any construction environment, you do have your challenges, make no mistake. But all in all, I believe some excellent performance. So what I'd like to highlight here is the battery energy storage system. Now, these contracts were awarded, the contractors are on site, and we are moving positively forward. Because it's no use, you know as well as I do, we can talk about additional capacity, but you cannot retire base load and just replace it with renewables. You have to replace it with a hybrid solution. Because sometimes when the sun shines and the wind blows, you don't need those electrons, and then you need to store it somewhere. And this is why this project for us is important, and it's moving very positively forward. And I am very pleased to say that it seems that all the indications are under progress now that by the middle of next year, this phase 1 of the battery energy storage project will be successful. That is just a slide to indicate to you since March 2015, in terms of Sierra, Ingula, Medupi and Kusile, what the progress has been, and that we have the 2 units at Kusile, unit number 5 and unit number 6. That is still outstanding. I'd like to end my overview here, and I'd like to invite Thomas Conradi, that will now deep dive into generation and give much more detail on the plans. What are we doing to make sure we deal with these challenges that we do have. So I thank you for your time. Thanks.
Right, good afternoon, ladies and gents. Certainly, as indicated by Mr. Oberholzer, the performance of generation certainly not satisfactory, and primarily coming from the coal fleet that is not performing well. I would like to spend the time this afternoon to share with you our plans, also in terms of how to turn this performance around, and all the initiatives that we are currently taking. Firstly, for each of the power stations, we have developed a turnaround plan, and that's with the intention to improve that, the performance of that, and we are driving this with a lot of urgency. But we also realize that we need the capacity, external capacity from the private sector to assist us in that we are 4,000 megawatts short on capacity in order to allow us sufficient room to maintain our plant. This gap will need to be closed by external suppliers, and that will give us opportunity then to effectively execute our reliability maintenance program that is critical for returning the performance of our plants. Due to the backlog in maintenance, this shortage of generating capacity is causing us to be in a position that we continue to have load shedding, and this will remain until we've got adequate capacity in the country to both serve the demand, but also being able to have enough capacity available to actually do the reliability maintenance program. Eskom will, however, continue to drive performance improvement of the fleet within these constraints of inadequate system availability, but also inadequate funding, which is negatively impacting our ability to really do this maintenance program the quickest and the best. But we will continue to forge forward in order to get the plant in much better position. If we look at the performance over the financial year thus far, the top graph showing the energy availability factor, and with the different bars on each of the months for the last 3 financial years, with the current one, FY23. We can see that we're about 1% below on the month of October, but year to date, we are performing significantly below our targeted figure. We're currently sitting at just about 59%, 58.6%, against a target that we've put to ourselves for 65%. We can see that that is also lower to the order of 5% on the previous financial year. Jan also alluded to it earlier in terms of the excessive burn that we're experiencing on the OCGTs, and one can see on the bottom graph that there's been significant burn on the OCGTs, in that we've exceeded already significantly even our year-end projection in terms of megawatt hours to produce. We're currently sitting at about 15% load factor for the OCGTs, whereas we've budgeted for in the order of 7%. Just to then drill down a bit in terms of the UCLF and the high UCLF that we're currently experiencing, and as indicated by Jan, it's primarily coming from the coal fleet, although we've had earlier this year also the incidents at Koeberg 1, as alluded to earlier. Firstly, on the forced full load losses, we can see on our full load losses, the very left bar, that we've got 5.3% and 4.4% relating to units that are currently off. Those are major incidents. The bottom one primarily relating to Medupi Unit 4, that we know has been off for the last 12 months, and then also other units that are off. Then we've got on outage slip, that's where units not returning after a planned outage. And the one on that's a major event there is that we've had on Duva Unit 2 extended period for that unit being off following the return to its service. We've also experiencing boiler tube leaks to the order of 2.7%, trips 2.4%, and as indicated earlier, that is indicative also of the unreliability that we're currently experiencing in the coal fleet. But then certainly the largest component, the partial load losses, and there are various reasons for that, which I will just touch on a little bit in some future slides, then giving us the 30.8% for the total UCLF. There are some other smaller load loss factors, as you can indicate by the next few columns there. So Jan indicated that the coal fleet is our major concern, but I also need to indicate that 55% of the total unavailability of the fleet is coming from 5 stations, as been indicated there. And that's also why we've then identified the so-called top 6 stations. We have intentionally excluded Medupi Power Station from this one. And the reason for that is that Medupi has shown significant improvement in terms of performance. The UCLF is still fairly high here indicated because of the Unit 4 that's continuously off. But to give an indication, I've checked just now that we were running 94% availability on the remainder 5 units of Medupi. So it's really encouraging to see that we've managed to address the defects on Medupi and running significantly better. So we've identified the 6 stations which we are focusing on, being the Tuka, Kendal, Duva, Majuba, Kusile and Matla power stations. And we believe in terms of really driving those 6 power stations there, turnaround plans aggressively, we can obtain a lot of megawatts back from onto the system. We can also see that there's still some of the coal plants that are really performing very well. Towards the right-hand side there, Letabu, Matimba, Kumati, Kuberg, performing very well in terms of much lower losses on average. On the right-hand side, just to give indication that we've got various problems on the plant contributing to this unavailability. Boilers being mainly on the boiler tube leaks that we're experiencing. On turbine plant, where we're experiencing quite a bit of partial load losses, is also relating to vacuum problems. The draft plant, on a generator plant, on milling plant, specifically Majuba Power Station, picking up a lot of unavailability on milling plant. And then also some of the other plant areas as indicated on the pie chart. So just to then come more towards the generation improvement plans, we've been communicating the 9-point plan for some time also, and that still has been driven, and a lot of the items on that being addressed, and we're also giving feedback on the 9-point plan to really improve the EAF on the power stations. But we've got the levers there also in terms of improvement on our operations. The reliability, maintenance and technical plan projects is fundamental to us being able to get the plants to perform better, to be more reliable and available. As I indicated, the 9-point plan. On the primary energy, we have also spent a lot of time in terms of improving coal supply to the stations, getting more stable and more predictable coal qualities, and also improving the coal qualities to the plant in order to be able for the plants to perform better. I've touched on the new build performance, where we've seen significant improvement, and we continue rolling out also the new build modifications and improvements to the other units all the units at Medupi, as well as those at Kusile. Partial load losses and turnaround on unit trips, major focus, and the station turnaround plans are also a lot focusing on the strategies and the plans for reduction in partial load losses and trip reduction. But this is all underlined also by a cultural transformation. And Eskom has launched the 11610 culture transformation. I will share a slide just a bit later also on that. We really want to also embrace the 6 culture cornerstones, to really give priority to people, to make sure that we strive towards operational excellence and implement best practices in our business, but that we are also financially prudent, that we are customer-centric, and all held accountable for the respective roles that we need to fulfill, and ultimately also embracing the values of Eskom.